Now, ever since Russia invaded into Ukraine, the Western strategy has been to cripple the Russian finances, for which the West, of course, led by the United States, imposed one sanction after another. And although the ruble did tumble in the initial days of the war, it managed to bounce back. But now the ruble has begun to slip again. Since this morning, the ruble has been trading at almost about 100 rubles per dollar. In fact, the ruble has now been dubbed as the third worst performing currency this year. So what factors have resulted in this meltdown of the ruble, and what does it mean for the Russian war in Ukraine? Take a look.
Nearly 18 months into war, the economic consequences are catching up with Russia. The impact is evident on its currency. The ruble is at its lowest since the war began. The Russian currency is at 101 against the dollar. It has declined by some 25% since the beginning of this year. Russia's current account balance had fallen to $5.4 billion in the second quarter. It was a year-over-year plunge of a whopping 93%. Do you know what this means? The shrinking number suggests that Russia's exports have taken a hit. For a country heavily reliant on export of commodities such as fossil fuels and grain, this is not a good sign. In December, the G7 group imposed a $60 price cap on Russian oil. The value of exports has slumped ever since. Russia's earnings were 15% lower in dollars from January to July. As the government executes its war, Moscow's military spending has skyrocketed. Imports have surged. Western sanctions weigh heavy on its energy exports. The fall in currency was a long time coming. The Russian central bank emphasized that it saw no risk to Russia's economic stability. But only a few hours later, it called for an emergency meeting. It also jacked up the interest rates to 12%, showing a jump of 3.5 percentage points. If there was no risk, what explains this move? Is Russia trying to save face? Last year, around this time, the ruble was worth 60 against the US dollar. Today, it's far cheaper. It's become the third worst performing currency of the year. It's now in line with perennially troublesome currencies like the Argentine peso and Turkish lira. How weak are these currencies exactly? Let's see. A year ago, you needed only around 100 Argentine pesos to buy $1 US. But now, $1 accounts for some 350 pesos. In the black market, it exceeds 500 pesos. Argentina is battling its worst economic crisis in years. Inflation reached 109% in May. The central bank's benchmark interest rate sits at 97%. The Turkish lira also shows a similar trend. To buy $1 US, you would need 27 lire. 5 years ago, just 4.5 lire would do it. The currency value has been eroded by 80%. 2 months ago, inflation had officially hit 40%. You see, Argentina and Turkey's economy have been troubled for years. What else would you expect from their currencies? Russia, on the other hand, has remained a superpower. Now, the Russian ruble has stooped so low that it is being compared to pesos and lira. That's what a year of war can do to a country. Sanctions and capital controls have isolated Russia from the international financial system. The fate of the Russian economy depends not on international financiers, but on the depths of Putin's aggression. And the end seems nowhere in sight. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Now, the 15th of August marks 2 years since the Taliban stormed to power in Kabul. And what this has meant is the complete invisibilization of women in Afghanistan. When the United States of America struck a deal with the Taliban promised to be different in their second avatar. But 2 years on, it's a fairly long time to assess. And what has clearly happened in Afghanistan is that the war in Afghanistan, more than anything else, is actually a war on women of Afghanistan. More than any other section of people, it is the women and young girls of Afghanistan who paid the biggest price and have been the most affected due to the obscurantist and the irrational rules imposed by the Taliban. Nearly 2 decades of hard-fought and relative progress in women's rights has been completely wiped off under Taliban's Iron Fist rule. Afghan women face some of the harshest suppression globally. And this is dictated by the stringent and the strange interpretation of the Sharia law by the Taliban. Consider this. When Angel Jibreel visited Prophet Muhammad at Mount Hira, the very first word uttered by Angel Jibreel to Prophet Muhammad was Iqra, which means to read. And the Taliban, who claim to be upholding the Sharia, have barred women and girls from reading. When the Taliban stormed to power, they had initially pledged to uphold basic human rights. But 2 years on, the hardline Islamists have severely trampled upon women's freedoms. They've placed restrictions on virtually every aspect of women's life in Afghanistan. The so-called Ministry for Propagation of Virtue and Prevention of Vice is now on an overdrive. It is responsible for enforcing the Taliban's narrow morality laws. And Afghan women and girls have been prohibited from being at school, right up from 6th grade onwards. They can only be provided with medical care by women doctors. Female-run businesses have been completely prohibited. In many areas of the country, women have been instructed to stay at home and to not step out. They're permitted in some cases to travel, but they can travel only for not more than 75 kilometers without a mahram, which is a male relative. A strict dress code has been imposed, which involves wearing the burqa. They're barred from working at the United Nations and even at non-governmental organizations, and most recently, women's beauty salons have also been shut. The United Nations says that the situation for women and girls' rights in Afghanistan has reverted back to the pre-2002 era. The echoes of oppressive policies resonate throughout the country. Women feel completely invisible, suffocated and imprisoned in their own land. The education, work, basic freedoms have all been stripped away for Afghan girls and women.
When a girl does not study, she cannot become a doctor, an engineer, a reporter, and a teacher. When a girl is illiterate, her future will be ruined. Her country will be undeveloped.
From my point of view, if the situation continues like this, the future will be dark and uncertain. It will cause that half of the society gets paralyzed.
Now, even though Afghanistan's universities have expressed their readiness to welcome female students, the ruling Taliban leaders, who wield the ultimate power over their fate, have disallowed this. When the Taliban had been ousted from power, Afghan women had got the right to study, work and travel, and now that the Americans have been driven out from the country, the world has also turned a complete blind eye to the plight of women in Afghanistan. Many Afghan women feel the international community has neglected them since the Taliban took over. They see the Western nations as watching and condemning and sometimes even engaging with the Taliban, but doing very little to improve the plight of women who are caught in this country. In reality, the war in Afghanistan did not end with the Americans packing their bags and fleeing. If anything, the war for the women in Afghanistan has just gotten that much more desperate and that much more difficult. And as 2 years under the Taliban have come and gone by, Afghanistan, a nation that has been described as the heart of Asia, continues to bleed. Now, this was a scene that was straight out of a heist movie, and it happened in the home of Hollywood. A video has gone viral online, and it shows a daring smash and grab raid at a mall in Los Angeles. A mob of over 50 crooks with their faces hidden behind masks descended upon a luxury goods shop inside of a mall. The target? High-end merchandise worth tens of thousands of dollars that lay within the walls of the Canoga Park North String. Dressed in complete dark attire, a group of nearly about 50 individuals looted and pillaged through the shop, stealing all the bags and the clothes that they could get their hands on. And estimates say that they made away with goods worth anywhere from $100,000 to perhaps $300,000. The footage from the scene that has now gone viral shows the complete chaos. Believe it or not, this is what happened inside of a mall when these 50 mobsters descended onto this mall. They darted between aisles and also smashed the glass display and witnesses said that the thieves violently snatched valuable goods. They toppled the display racks and store shelves. They threw a plethora of high-end items just across the floor. The shelves and mannequins were knocked over as the store employees looked on in complete disbelief. Now, according to the LA police, the thieves in fact fled the scene in several cars, including BMWs and Lexuses. Imagine thieves turning up in BMWs to steal from a mall. In this mayhem, one security guard reportedly tried to intervene, but then the crooks quickly incapacitated him with a chemical spray on his face. The thieves' focus was crystal clear. They were after luxury bags, they were after high-end clothing, and anything of value that could be swiftly seized. The brazen crime, which took place last Saturday in one of the most upscale neighborhoods of Los Angeles, has left behind a trail of complete confusion. The LA police arrived at the scene and they've promised speedy action. Even the Los Angeles mayor said that the criminals must be held to account. But retail crime in the United States goes well beyond this one incident. This, remember, is not the first time that this kind of a flash mob burglary has been carried out in Los Angeles. Just last week, up to 30 people reportedly raided a Yves Saint Laurent shop at a brand shopping center in Glendale. The thieves that carried out a near identical attack took goods worth $300,000. It remains unclear whether it was the same bunch of mobsters who carried out this attack. The brazen robbery has sparked fervent demands for more aggressive policing and measures to quell the surge in violent thefts in the United States. An eerily similar scenario also played out back in 2021 when a group of 5 thieves had wreaked havoc deploying some mysterious spray. The ensuing chaos had prompted a large-scale evacuation. Several suspects were apprehended, which revealed their links to a larger pattern of organized crime spanning multiple robberies. As shocking as these incidents are, what is even more shocking is how completely ill-prepared these high-end retail shops actually are, and also how completely sluggish is the police response in the United States against this type of organized crime. The U.S. National Retail Federation has estimated that the retail losses due to this kind of retail theft have totaled a staggering $100 billion last year, that is in the year 2022. You must hear that again. $100 billion of items have been stolen from shops in the United States of America. This survey found that the rate of organized retail crime in the year 2022 had gone up by nearly about 26.5%. Luxury retailers in the United States now find themselves grappling with the harsh reality of securing their spaces. The bustling city of dreams, Los Angeles, now faces a challenge to reclaim its trees from the clutches of these audacious criminals in the United States, and also to restore a sense of safety in its embrace. The U.S. state of Philadelphia has nabbed what it calls an aspiring terrorist. The Philadelphia officials have arrested a 17-year-old supporter of Islamic extremists, and reports say that this teenager allegedly had been radicalized online. The 17-year-old juvenile now faces charges of possessing weapons of mass destruction. This is one of the charges that's been leveled. But officials say that the case can't go to the federal court due to the suspect's age. But the question is this: has the police just scratched the tip of an iceberg? Are there terror groups that are now beginning to target American children? Let's get you the details. Now, the officials are calling this teenager as an aspiring terrorist. The U.S. authorities have not put out any details to identify this underage suspect, but they've specified that the underage suspect hails from a Muslim family. Now, the American investigators are also pointing out that the suspect's ideologies do not represent the beliefs of his faith. The district attorney has said, and I quote him here, "Now, the work of the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force potentially has thwarted a catastrophic terror attack in the name of a perverted ideology that in no way, shape or form represents the beliefs of the overwhelming majority of the peace-seeking people of faith, including Muslims."
We are here to announce the arrest of a juvenile young man in a probe of terrorism. The young man who's under arrest was an aspiring terrorist who was not merely thinking but was doing. things that are deeply disturbing and presented a grave danger to everyone. Himself, his family, the block where he lived. And frankly, people everywhere in Philadelphia, and potentially people around the country or even overseas.
The officials say that this is the most serious alleged terror activity that has been prosecuted in Philadelphia. The juvenile will now face a series of charges, including possessing weapons of mass destruction, criminal conspiracy, arson, risking catastrophe, attempting to commit criminal mischief, and possession of an instrument of crime. The most shocking allegations leveled against the underage suspect is that he tried to purchase materials to help construct an explosive device. And he tried to purchase the raw materials for an explosive device via the internet. The special agents say that the 17-year-old individual had done some general research into some specific targets that he wanted to go after.
Most concerning, however, was the evidence that he had access to firearms and had purchased items and materials commonly used in the construction of improvised explosive devices. Some of these purchases had just occurred in the last few weeks. Among the items he purchased were tactical equipment, wiring, chemicals, and devices often used as remote detonators. These purchases quickly escalated this case in both threat and priority for our office. And this was now a situation where we believe public safety was at risk.
The officials further say that the juvenile was in communication with a certain group called Katibat al-Tawheed wal-Jihad. Now, this is some kind of an Al-Qaeda affiliated group. The US designated this individual group as a foreign terror organization last year. In 2017, reports say that the group was in fact responsible for a metro attack in St. Petersburg. In 2016, the group was suspected for a suicide car bombing outside of a Chinese embassy in Kyrgyzstan. A report said that the terror group operates from Syria's Idlib province. Now, the FBI has further said that the team purchased bomb-making materials and was being guided from the KTJ on how to make improvised explosives. The US Customs and Border Protection has said that 14 international shipments of military gear were delivered to the teen's address. Law officials further say that they will attempt to try the juvenile as an adult, but this is going to be difficult because the suspect is quite clearly under the age of 18. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.